Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Let's see. Looks like we have a few people online. Welcome to those of you who are online. And there's a couple new faces, or one new face here in our studio, so I'm just going to introduce myself. My name is Julie Tharalson. I am the dietitian with Agency on Aging. And this class that we're teaching is called Food Smarts. So we're talking about, this is actually our fourth class in the series of 5. And what we do is we usually do some cooking. I'm going to be doing some cooking today. We're going to make some vegetable fried rice. And we're going to talk about healthy grocery shopping today. And we're also going to talk more about whole grains, which we started talking about last week. And then our final class next week, we're going to talk all about the food label. Okay, and what kind of things that you need to be looking for. We're also going to be talking about some money-saving strategies, and so not only how to, what to look for in the grocery store, but also how to save money. And I've kind of been talking about that all throughout the class on how to do that. So we'll just kind of continue with that today. But what we're going to be doing, so in the book, hopefully everybody has a book. Okay. If you don't have your book, you can go ahead and share. Those of you who are joining online, if you don't have one of our Food Smarts books and you would like one, go ahead and you can message in the chat with your, Sean, do you want like an email or? Yeah, email. Okay, if you could just give put an email in there, we can get in touch with you and send you our book for Food Smarts. And even if you haven't been here for all of the other classes, that's totally fine. There's all kinds of really good information in this booklet on how to eat well and how to save money and just basic things for nutrition that are good to know for anybody. But obviously our class focuses on people 60 and over. So there's certainly good information for that as well. So today, we're going to be starting on page 40 in the book, and the section is called Choosing Whole Foods. And so we're going to talk about a bunch of different things. We've talked about, over the last couple of classes, we've talked about how when we go into the grocery store, a lot of times we're sort of very conditioned to pick up certain foods and certain products. Like when you go in the grocery store, most of us out of habit tend to choose the same things, right? I choose this brand and this is what I eat and I'm not really looking at anything else. And as I've been encouraging you guys to do for the last couple of sessions, what I want you to do is maybe start looking beyond what you're used to grabbing and seeing if there are some better choices out there. And we're going to talk more about this today. Better products out there, more healthy products that are out there, maybe cheaper products that are out there that may still be really good, and see if maybe those are worth bringing into your habit, right? Your daily food habit. Most of us tend to eat kind of the same foods all the time. It's all habit, and that's kind of normal. Our brain tends to form habits so it doesn't have to work so hard. So when you go in the grocery store, you don't have to agonize over everything. You can go, that's the box I get, that's the can I get, those are the that's the bottle of this particular type of stuff that I get, right? We tend to form habits. And so you can form bad habits, but you can also form good habits, right? But that takes a little bit of work. So, if you're trying to form new ones. So we'll continue talking about that. Okay, one of the things, if you look at page 40, you'll see grocery store heroes. Which of these grocery store heroes do you eat often, and which would you add to your diet? They have a couple of different things on here. They have things like olive oil, but we'll talk about that. Last week we talked about my plate and we talked about different food groups. We didn't really get into oils and fats all that much, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about it here because some of you have had questions about it. We spent some time because somebody asked me about is oil better than, is oil a better kind of fat? Is it bad for you? What's the best kind of oil and things like that? And hi, come on in, have a seat. In this book it says olive oil, and olive oil is a particular type of fat. It has primarily what we call monounsaturated fats in it. Monounsaturated fats are ones that are really, really good for your heart, okay? But if we're choosing, the other thing about olive oil is it can be a little bit pricey. All right. What I want to tell you is that while olive oil is a really good fat, the best kind of fats to choose for your heart are any kind of fats that are liquid at room temperature, which is oil pretty much, right? I mean, butter gets soft at room temperature, but it's still a solid. If it's liquid at room temperature, it's going to be best for your heart. So that's not only olive oil, but it's also things like vegetable oil and canola oil and sunflower oil and all of these other corn oil, all those other kind of things. The types of fats that are not so good for your heart is anything that's solid at room temperature. Okay, so that's generally animal fats. So that's things like butter and bacon, right? The white fat that's on red meat. It doesn't mean don't eat those things. It just means don't eat them regularly, right? If you really like bacon, there's no reason to give up bacon if you want to have a healthy diet. You're just not going to eat it every day, right? Maybe you have it once a week, right? And the reason that these fats are hard, the hard fats are bad for your heart, is that whenever you eat hard fat, what it does is it actually stimulates your liver to make cholesterol. Okay, did you guys know you make your own cholesterol? Yeah, we're going to talk way more about this next week when we talk about hydrogenated fats, which you may or may not have heard of. I'm going to get more into that. But what happens in cholesterol is the stuff that gets in and blocks up those arteries, right? So what I always tell people is if it's hard out here, it's going to be hard in here. Okay, so liquid fats aren't going to really do that. They don't stimulate the liver to make more cholesterol. Again, we'll revisit this next week. So when it says olive oil is grocery store hero, that's fine. But what I want you to think of more broadly is that all liquid fats are better choices than hard fats, right? I also include things like shortening, right? Is Crisco hard? Yeah, it's made out of plant oils though, which is really weird. And they do something to it called hydrogenation, which again, I will talk about next week. But if it's hard out here, it's going to be hard in here. That's the main thing to remember. Okay, so oils. So oils are good if you're using fats in your diet, which all of us are using fats to some degree. Those are the best ones to have. And things that are made with oils that are not hydrogenated. Okay. Fish. Okay, fish is kind of pricey, right? Yeah, fish, but how many of y'all like fish? I love fish. I eat fish all the time. Fish is particularly high in a type of fat called, it's an omega-3 fatty acid. Fatty acids are like these building blocks for fats. And omega-3 fatty acids also appear to be really good for heart health and a lot of other things as well. There's still a lot of research going on. And recommendations for healthy diets indicate that having a serving of fish once a week is a really good thing if you want to have a healthy diet. Now, that can be canned fish, which is going to be a lot cheaper, right? So some of the things that you might want to think about in terms of having a healthy diet is if you like fish and you can get some of that into your diet, if it's difficult to afford fresh fish, which again, that's pricey stuff. It can be pricey stuff, but frozen is acceptable and so is canned. So if tuna fish, so if you have caviar dreams on a tuna fish budget, right? A can of tuna is fine. All right, canned salmon, canned mackerel, there's a lot of different fish that you can get canned, right? The other nice thing about that, especially if you're in a small household, which again, most people over 60 tend to be in very small households or just themselves, it may, just in terms of food storage, be easier to have canned fish rather than fresh fish, because fresh fish doesn't last very long, right? So if you buy fish, or you can freeze it, but it might be a little more convenient and cheaper to buy the canned stuff. Okay, so that's just something to think about. Let's see here. Spices, I'm not going to go way into that, but there's a lot of research that shows us that different spices and different herbs may have some health benefits. I'm going to plug the eatfresh.org website again. For those of you who are new, there is a website that I pull a lot of my cooking ideas from for this class. It's called eatfresh.org. And it's really good. One of the things I really like about it is that you can put an ingredient in there that you have. Like, let's say you have some, in the case of herbs and spices, maybe you have something like cinnamon and you want to know what to do with cinnamon. You put cinnamon and it'll pull up all the recipes that have cinnamon in them. And you can scale it so you can you're not stuck with like 6 servings of something. You can put in 2 servings or 1 serving or something like that. So if you haven't taken a look at that, I highly encourage you to do that. Okay? Nuts and seeds. Again, these can be on the pricier side. But the thing about nuts and seeds is that portions are really small. We talked about portions a couple of sessions ago. A portion size of nuts is only about a 1/4 cup, right? So that's a very small handful. Nuts are super high in healthy fats, right? So some nuts are going to be more expensive than others. Something like peanuts are going to be way cheaper than like almonds or hazelnuts or things like that, which are going to be a lot more expensive. But nut butters figure in there too. So if you want some healthy fats with a good dose of protein, plant protein, which we talked about last week, plant protein, replacing some of the animal proteins in your diet with plant proteins tends to be healthier. Something like peanut butter can fit in there really well, or almond butter, or any of those things. Portion sizes are pretty small on those. So nuts or seeds. One of the things, so I'm going to be actually doing a veggie fried rice recipe. I actually do this at home. One of the things I put in it are toasted almonds to add a little bit of sort of texture, but also to add some more healthy fats and a little bit of protein in it as well. So we'll talk about that while I'm cooking. All right, green veggies like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, kale, and collards. Now, I don't think anybody here in here is going to dispute me if I say that people who tend to be healthier tend to eat more fruits and vegetables. I mean, I think that we all kind of accept that as, well, yeah, more vegetables, those are good for us. And the other thing, and I think we've talked about this a little bit last week, is that having fruits and veggies in your diet, some of the problems with that when you have a small household is that higher risk of things going bad before you use them, right? I think we talked about strawberries, like if you buy strawberries, because we're coming into strawberry time of year, right? You buy strawberries, you have like maybe 2 days to use them up before they we talked about the benefits of buying frozen fruits and vegetables because they last longer and they're already prepared, right? So any of these recipes, including the one that I'm making today, you could easily do with frozen veggies. We talked about how the more variety in fruits and vegetables you have in your diet is good, right? But one of the biggest problems, again, is that you buy fresh fruits and vegetables, they might go bad before you use them. So having a big variety is difficult if you're by yourself because you have to try to use all of them and you're just feeding one person. So frozen and canned can work. They tend to be cheaper than fresh, all right? Canned vegetables, one of the things I mentioned, if you remember, is that before using them, rinse them off, put them in a colander, rinse them off. That gets rid of a lot of the salt that's a problem with canned veggies sometimes. And with frozen, you can just keep them stored and then take out only as much as you need. So if you want to have a handful of peas in the soup that you're eating, you just kind of throw them in there, and those peas are going to be good for 6 months in your freezer. So it actually helps you save money because you're not throwing out fresh stuff that maybe you didn't eat, okay? Fruits and vegetables, does anybody remember when I told you how many servings of fruits and vegetables are recommended daily? 8? I talked about this last week, what? 5. Yeah, 5 servings a day. It's actually 5 to 9 servings, so you guys are in the range. 5 to 9 servings a day are recommended for fruits and vegetables, right? And we talked about how a serving size is only about a half a cup, or what you would fit into the palm of your hand, all right? So when you're eating your meals, one of the things I suggested was to try to plan your meals and plan like how many fruits and vegetables to get in to your day. So if you're only eating like maybe 2 servings a day and you want to improve that and try to go to 3, planning your meals out at the beginning of the week is helpful. So you can go, okay, well, I'm going to eat, maybe I always eat a turkey sandwich for lunch. I need to remember, oh yeah, I'm going to put a piece of fruit with that. Or I'm going to put some extra tomatoes and lettuce in there to equal about a half a serving. So you have to kind of think about getting more fruits and vegetables. But when you're in the grocery store, the wider variety of fruits and vegetables you can buy and get into your diet, the better. And like I said, for a small household, that may mean frozen or canned, and that's perfectly fine. A lot of people just kind of think, oh, canned is terrible, I can't eat that. And that's not really true because you're actually better off eating canned produce than not eating any produce at all, okay? And it's a lot cheaper, which is really important. Garlic, they have on here. I mean, garlic is, one of the things I like about garlic is people who are trying to lower their salt intake. Garlic is one of those things that can kind of stand in and provide flavor, right? So they have some, lowers cholesterol, helps regulate blood sugar and all that kind of stuff. This is a little bit, there's still a lot of research going on in these areas. So I don't think I personally don't know how to cook unless I'm using garlic, but that's just me. But they have that on there. Berries along with fruits and vegetables. So these are just some things that you can take a look for when you're in the grocery store. Next week, as I said, we're going to talk more about food labels so you have a better idea of what to look for. Has anybody ever heard of the advice to, if you want to shop healthy in the grocery store, to go along the perimeter of the store? Okay, I'm glad you haven't heard that. I actually don't like that advice. It's kind of, one of those things people, if you want to eat healthy, make sure you go around the perimeter. Well, there's a lot of good things that are inside the store, right? Inside on the aisles, right? There's beans and there's grains and there's canned vegetables and there's a lot of other stuff on there. So that advice typically is, around the perimeter of the stores where they tend to have stuff that is fresh and unprocessed. It depends on the grocery store, right? So a lot of times you find, produce there and you find meats and that kind of stuff. But if you hear that advice, I don't really subscribe to that. And it actually is printed in this book, so I'm just going to say I disagree with that when you see it in here. There's a lot of really good stuff in the store as well. Okay. So we already talked a little bit about, on page 41, choosing and using healthy fats. I've kind of gone over this, so you can take a look at it. It's printed here. Trans fats that you see there, I'm going to talk more about next week when we talk about the food label. And I'm going to talk about hydrogenated fats as well, because those are Those are 2 types of fats that are really super bad for your heart, and they're required to be listed on the food label. So we're going to pick that up there. Okay. All right. Let's see here. I'm going to have you look at page 43. This is another cost-saving step. Eating foods in season. All right. I just talked about how it's important to try to have as much variety in fruits and vegetables as you can in what you're eating. But if you're buying fresh, it's really important to know what is in season, because if you're buying foods that are in season, they're going to be better quality and they're going to be cheaper. Okay, so that's why I think last week I gave you guys the example that if you're trying to buy strawberries in December, you know, strawberries, do we have these listed on here? I don't see, berries, yeah, in the summer. So generally berries are kind of like late spring into summer. So we're coming into, in the next couple of months, into berry season. So if you want to buy strawberries and blackberries and blueberries and all those kind of things, December is not the time to buy those. They're available, but they're coming up from like Peru, right? And so they have to be picked and shipped, and you know, the longer these vegetables have been, or these fruits have been off the vine, the more nutrient content that they're losing, right? Not to say that eating, you know, berries from Peru is bad, but they're probably not going to be as flavorful or as nutritious, and they're probably going to be way more expensive because they had to ship them from Peru. Okay, so so if you're buying fresh fruits and vegetables, it's important to know what's in season and what you should be buying, right? And so if you don't have an idea of what's in season, this is a guide to kind of help you, right? There's a definite change in what you see. So in the fall, you see a lot of apples because that's what's in season. There are some fruits and vegetables that are in they're just year-round, and they don't really change in price all that much. And so these are things like bananas and broccoli and lettuce and things like that. I mean, lettuce, one of the things about living in California, particularly where we live, is there's a lot of stuff that grows right around us. So, you know, for us in particular, some things are a little bit more in season than they would be in other parts of the country. Does anybody know where the salad bowl of the United States is? Where they grow the most lettuce greens? It's Salinas. It's not that far from here, really, right? That's the lettuce bowl of the world. There's a lot of greens that grow there, and they're always kind of growing, right? And so we're near there. So like we're going to have a lot more salad greens year-round than if you lived in some place like Nebraska or something. They're going to be paying a lot more there. So there, in fact, one of these squares you can see available all year. So there are certain things that are available year-round that are generally going to be kind of the same price year-round, right? I know in my house, there are only certain times of year that we're going to eat berries, that we're going to eat watermelon, that we're going to eat, you know, peaches and things like that. I don't buy them the rest of the year, even if they're in the grocery store, because I know they're going to be more expensive and they're not going to taste as good, right? I don't buy citrus in the summer because that's a winter fruit. Citrus is winter, right? So this is a good thing to kind of familiarize yourself with and sort of plan around that, because prices are definitely going to be higher in the off season. Okay. Anybody have any questions about that? Yeah?
I have a question back on garlic.
Yeah, garlic, uh-huh.
When it says mint, and I don't squeeze in garlic, I just like to cut the garlic and put it in there.
Yeah.
Do you lose anything if you don't squeeze it?
No, not at all. So the question was, for those of you online, that he is wondering if there's any kind of nutrient lost if he's not squeezing the garlic in a garlic squeezer or anything like that and cutting it up. No, absolutely not. One of the things that, just more of a culinary technique, is that the finer you process your garlic, the more of it is going to be available to flavor whatever it is you're cooking. Right? So if you're putting, well, we're going to actually be using garlic in the rice today. So if I chop that up into some larger chunks, it would flavor up the rice, but it wouldn't be as widespread as if I really pulverized it. And then it's going to be more widespread across all of the rice that we're using. So then that's not really a nutrition thing. That's just sort of more of a flavor thing, right? So, okay, good question though. Yeah, but you're absolutely fine in chopping or smashing it or any of those things. Okay, let's turn to page 44. We've been talking about whole grains. Do you have a book? Oh, you don't have a book. Sean, are you able to run this out to her? Do you need 2 of them? Yeah. Thank you. Okay. If you look on page 44, we start talking about whole grains. And like I said, I've been talking about whole grains a little bit on and off throughout the course. And last week, when we talked about my plate, like the different food groups, we did talk about grains. And I talked about one of the rules with grains in your diet that is a good rule for a healthy diet. Does anybody remember how much of the grains that you eat should be whole grains? No? Okay. Roughly half is the recommendation. So we talked about rice last week, and we talked about white rice versus brown rice. We talked about white bread versus brown bread. And I don't know how you all feel, but sometimes just in all the years I've been doing what I do, sometimes I will talk to people and they're like, you know what? I like white bread and I won't eat wheat bread. I don't like it. I don't want to buy it. I'm just not going to do that. And yeah.
Which one is more healthy for you?
Well, we're going to talk about that in just a second. And what I have to say about that is that if you really enjoy white bread and you're not going to eat the wheat bread, eat your white bread, right? The thing with whole grains is generally grains that are brown grains or whole grains are more healthy for you. But if only about half of what you eat is best to be whole grains, if bread isn't doing it for you, then try to find other places in your diet where you're eating grains that you would be willing to have whole grains, right? Maybe you're willing to change to a whole grain pasta or a whole grain like brown rice, or a whole grain cereal or whole grain crackers. So so in that case, sometimes I think that it's easy to kind of get like an all or nothing sort of attitude. It's like, if I'm not eating all whole grains, then my diet is terrible and I don't care, I'm just gonna eat whatever I want. And that's not true. It's like, if you like white bread, go for it. I had a man tell me that he had to have his sourdough every single day. And I said, okay, fine, have your sourdough. Are there other areas of grains in your diet that you might be willing to do a whole grain? Okay. And one of the things that I want you to do is I want you to kind of take a minute and think about your diet and what you eat every day, the foods that you have in your house right now. Think about what you have. What kind of bread? You don't have to tell me. You can just think of this in your head. What kind of bread do you have? If you eat bread, do you eat tortillas? Do you eat rice? Do you eat pasta? Do you eat crackers? Do you eat cereal? Do you eat oatmeal? Right? Think of all of those things and then think about how many of those are whole grain. Okay? And ideally about half, think about half of what you're eating should be whole grain. If it's not, try to think about ways that maybe, like I said, when you go in the grocery store and that's the kind of cereal that you buy every time, is there a better choice that is whole grain that maybe you might be willing to eat? Maybe you could try something new and see what you think. Because the bottom line is, I can tell you what to eat until I'm blue in the face. I could tell you what's good and what you should be eating. But if you don't want to eat that and it doesn't appeal to you, it doesn't matter what I'm saying, you're not going to do it. And I get that. Ultimately, our diets are there for more than just nourishing us. Our diets are there. Eating food should be pleasurable, right? That's one of the purposes that it serves, is it should be pleasurable. So, eating something just because it's good for you, but you really don't like it, well, can we do better? Can we find something that maybe works for you and happens to be healthy, right? And that comes down to all of you when you're in the grocery store kind of breaking free of that, okay, I know everything that I buy, but maybe I should look outside and see if you're doing this exercise where you're trying to figure out how many whole grains you're eating and you realize, oh my gosh, there's only one thing that's a whole grain that I'm willing to eat. Let's try to maybe find something, break myself from the programming of the grocery store and grabbing what I usually do, and look a little bit more to see what's out there. Okay? All right. So let's talk about what a whole grain actually is. Okay. So when I say whole grain, what do you guys think of? Whole grain foods. What comes to mind? Wheat? Okay. Like, so wheat bread, right? Or wheat, what else? Brown rice.
Oatmeal.
Oatmeal, right? So when we talk about whole grains, we need to also be concerned about how much processing that grain has had. Okay, so let's talk about oatmeal for a minute. If you go into the grocery store, how many different kinds of oatmeal are there? 3? Okay. What do you think? Old-fashioned, yep, like the rolled oats. Steel cut, yep. And then there's like the instant stuff, right? Yeah, so that's perfect. That was the answer I was looking for. So what is your name? DJ. Okay, welcome, DJ. So DJ was just telling us that it's there's 3 basic types of oatmeal in the store, right? There's usually like the steel cut or the whole grain kind, right? The whole, they haven't done anything to it. It's just pretty much they have the grain and they chopped it up a little bit, but they haven't done anything else to it. Rolled oats are what we see advertised as old-fashioned. Okay, old-fashioned are pretty much the steel-cut oats, but they've been put between like a steam, so they've been steamed and then like rolled. So you know what steamrollers do? They just kind of make everything sort of flat. And that's what the old-fashioned oats are. Now the difference between steel-cut and old-fashioned, in terms of nutrition, there really isn't any difference at all, but the difference is in how quick they cook. So steel cut oats are going to take a lot longer because it takes a lot longer for the hot water to penetrate that grain and kind of soften it up so that you can eat it. But when you steamroll it, you have really reduced the amount of, you've increased the amount of surface area, so it's a lot easier for water to get in and cook those, right? And then instant oats are another thing where they've taken the oats and they've pulverized them, and a lot of times they've pre-cooked them, and then they've pulverized them so they're sort of like a fine kind of flakes. You don't even need to cook those. You just pour hot water on it and you stir, okay? So those are the 3 basic kinds that we're talking about. In terms of nutrition, the one that is least nutritious is, what do you think? Instant, yeah, it's instant. Because in the processing, one of the things that they do is they remove the bran and the germ. We'll talk about that in just a second. The bran and the germ, so actually if you look on page 44 at this sort of round, this little diagram right here, this is a whole grain. This could be anything, it could be oats or wheat or whatever. And you'll see that there are 3 basic parts. The bran, which is that outer darker brown layer. There's the germ, which is that kind of small, slightly lighter brown layer. And then the endosperm, which is the lightest brown part, and it makes up most of the grain. Okay. Endosperm is where all of the carbohydrates, where all of the starch is, okay? But in terms of vitamins, most of that is contained, the vitamins and minerals, most of that is contained in the bran and the germ, okay? When you make Wonder Bread or you make instant oatmeal, you have to remove the germ and the bran, the most nutritious parts of that grain, to make the white bread or make the processed oatmeal or make the white pasta, right? Those kind of things. And it's really rich in carbohydrates, but it doesn't have a huge concentration of any other vitamins and minerals. There are some B vitamins and there are not a lot, okay? So to make that instant oatmeal, all that, the germ and the bran is taken away, and then they steam what's left, and then they kind of partially cook it, and then they pulverize it, and then all you have to do is dump water on it, right? The other thing with instant oatmeal is that very frequently it comes in flavors. You can get like peaches and cream and maple brown sugar and all that kind of stuff, right? So what does that mean they added to it? Sugar. That means they added a lot of sugar to it. And they might possibly have added some salt in there too, because salt is actually something that brings out the flavor a little bit, right? So of the 3 types of oats we just talked about, that instant is the most processed one. Okay, and you may have heard that processed foods are not the best for you, right? Not all processed foods are created equal. We're going to talk about that, but this is kind of the description that I'm going to give you here, okay? Now, let's go to the steel cut and the rolled oats. Now, the rolled oats have had some processing, right? But all they did was they ironed it out, okay? That's all they did. And those rolled oats are going to still have the bran and the germ involved, okay? So, but they just rolled it out, and you have to cook it, right? So rolled oats are processed, but they're not processed in such a way that makes them unhealthy, okay? And then the steel oats, they haven't really done anything with, except maybe they just chopped them up a little bit. That's just a mechanical adjustment designed to make them cook faster, not as fast as the rolled oats, but they have the bran, the germ. It's the whole grain, okay? Same thing with bread. If you look at bread, brown breads are generally more whole grain, but not necessarily, which is why you need to look at the food label, which we'll talk about in depth next week. But if you are looking at a loaf of bread or you're looking at any grain product, the very first item in the list of ingredients that you want to see is whole grain. Okay? So it might say whole grain oats, whole grain wheat, whole grain corn, you know, whatever the case is, whole grain. That's what you're looking for. And that should be the first, maybe the second ingredient. Okay, we're going to talk more about ingredient labels next week. But that's how you know. And another way that you know is by looking at the fiber. So on the food label, you're going to see a line that says fiber. If that, the more fiber something has in it, the more likely that is whole grain. Because if you look on this diagram again, you see bran. Bran contains fiber, B vitamins, and minerals. That's where the fiber is, right? Is fiber good for you? Yeah, it's very good for you. Absolutely. Really, really good. It's good for a lot of different things. But one of the downsides of fiber, well, I'm not going to say downside, but one of the things about fiber is that it protects the endosperm, because it surrounds the grain. It protects the endosperm from water, right? So if you're cooking something that's whole grain, you have to cook it longer because that water is going to take longer to penetrate the fiber layer to hydrate the inside so it's soft so you can eat it. That's brown rice, for example. Has anybody ever cooked brown rice? It takes a lot longer than white rice because white rice doesn't have the bran on it. So the water can go straight into that rice, the hot water, it can kind of soften up all the starch in there so that you can eat it. Brown rice, you got to cook for like at least twice as long, and longer than that in some cases, to get it soft enough to eat, and the fiber layer is why. So it takes longer, but it's healthier for you because that brown rice is going to have B vitamins, it's going to have minerals, it's going to have vitamin E in it, right? Vitamin E is a real powerful antioxidant, so it can help protect you against things that might cause cancer or heart disease, right? Vitamin E is in the germ. Has anybody ever heard of like wheat germ oil? That's where they get the germ from the wheat, the germ part of the grain, and they squeeze the oil out of it. That's really rich in vitamin E. But if you're eating the whole grain, you're going to get that anyway. Not going to get that if the grain is not whole. Okay? One of the things I talked about last week, and I think I talked about it previously, was the concept of nutrient density. Does anybody remember nutrient density? You see some nodding, okay. The concept of nutrient density is that every bite that you take in, the more vitamins and minerals it's providing for you, the better your diet is likely to be, right? So if you take a big bite of cookies and cream instant oatmeal, right, what kind of nutrients are you getting from that? What do you think? Probably not much. I mean, you're getting some carbohydrates from the grain. You're also from the sugar that they added into it, which aren't the best carbohydrates. But and maybe you're getting a few B vitamins, you know. So maybe you're getting that. But if you're eating the rolled oats, you're not getting all the extra sugar, unless you put it on there. But you're getting fiber, you're getting B vitamins, you're getting all of these nutrients, so that every bite of that rolled oats, you're getting way more nutrition than you are with every bite of that instant oatmeal. Okay? That's important at any age, but once you're over 60, it's even more critical. And there are a few reasons for that. One of the reasons is that as we get older, and particularly the farther advanced in age that we tend to get, we don't tend to have as much appetite as we used to in many cases. And that can be due to a variety of reasons. One of them is that the older you get, you don't have as much muscle tissue, which tends to drive how many calories you need. In some cases, medication or chronic disease, you know, chronic symptoms may make it more difficult to get adequate meals in, right? So in those cases, it's really important that with every bite that you eat, the more nutrition you get, because you still need to get your nutrition in, right? I mean, you can try to live off Ensure and all that, but I can tell you that that's not the best way to go. Food first is always best. So there's a lot of evidence that shows us that nutrients work better in the foods that they naturally come in anyway than the ones that have nutrients added later. And actually with grain products, that can be true. Like if you look at Wonder Bread, one of the things, the reason, why is it called Wonder Bread? Anybody know? So Wonder Bread was invented in like the 50s, and it was designed to be white bread that would be popular with everybody, and it still had all kinds of nutrients, because even though we stripped all the nutrients away to make the white flour, it's okay because we took all that flour and we sprayed it with B vitamins and iron and all kinds of stuff, and then we took that flour and we made it into bread. And I'm not knocking Wonder Bread if you like it, but there's a big difference between the nutrients that come naturally in that wheat grain. There's a lot of difference between that and this white flour that has been sprayed with vitamins, like just a chemical form of vitamins that they stick on and then they make the bread out of it. And a lot of that has to do with absorbability. You know, how easily can you absorb those nutrients into your body? And what else was lost besides the B vitamins? One of the things you see on here is a word called phytochemicals, right? Phytochemicals are a class of naturally occurring chemicals in food that they're not vitamins and they're not minerals, but there's a lot of research that shows us that they tend to help the vitamins and minerals in those foods work better, or they may have independent actions that protect against things like heart disease and cancer and all that kind of stuff. There's still a lot of research that's going on in these areas. But the thing that has come out of a lot of this research shows us that you're better off just eating whole foods than you are foods that have been stripped of all their nutrition and then had it put back in later in an artificial means. Okay? Does that make sense? Yeah, go ahead.
Question about Honey Nut Cheerios.
Yeah, Honey Nut Cheerios.
It's marketed as a type of a health food.
So you're asking if Honey Nut Cheerios is a health food. Okay. Well, are Cheerios whole grain? Yeah, I mean they put it on the box. It's a whole grain product. It has been processed to a degree, right? But the other big part of that, which we're going to talk about next week with the labels, but I'll give you a little preview here, is there's a new line on the food label that's called added sugar. If you look on food labels right now, that line did not used to appear on the food label. It would just say total carbohydrates and it would, tell you. Now, legally, we have to have total carbohydrates And then there's a line under it that says grams of added sugar. There's a lot of research now that's showing us that the more added sugar we have in our diet increases the risk of heart disease. And who knows what else? There's still a lot of research going on. There's always nutrition research going on. So what I would say to that is, okay, Honey Nut Cheerios, you are whole grain, I see that, but you're also giving me this huge dose of sugar in every bowl. So is that kind of canceling out that whole grain? You know, because that's kind of what it's looking like with the research I've seen so far. So there's a big push now to make people aware of looking at how much added sugars are in the food. And when I say added sugars, that's just things that weren't there naturally, right? So if you look at something like cranberry juice, there's going to be some natural sugar in cranberry juice, right? And that's fine because it's, there as part of the fruit. But what about all of the sugar that you added into that? It'll say added sugars, 18 grams of added sugars. Is that a lot? Well, we can, we'll talk about that next week. How many grams of added sugars should you have a day and still be safe, right? Well, we'll get into that discussion next week. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Sometimes it's just kind of best to go with your gut, and just see. Does it mean don't ever eat, Honey Nut Cheerios? No, if you like Honey Nut Cheerios, and you can make them fit into your diet by making sure everything else is relatively healthy, then go for it. One of the things I as a dietitian, I get kind of annoyed with when I see is articles, people talking about, superfoods or, foods to avoid at all. Never, ever buy this. And I'm like, I don't really agree with that because I tend to look at it as more of an 80-20 deal, right? And does anybody know the 80-20 rule? If what you're eating 80% of the time is pretty healthy, it kind of doesn't matter that much what you're doing with the other 20%, right? So if you are, eating fruits and vegetables, you're eating whole grains, you're doing all of the things that, we know are healthy for your diet. If you want to have bacon sometimes, or you want to have Honey Nut Cheerios, or cookies and cream, instant oatmeal, or Fritos, or whatever it is that you want to have, that's fine, right? But you just got to keep it to that 20%, and you should be okay. Because eating food should be a pleasure, always. Okay, and a big part of what we're talking about with this class when I'm doing cooking is how to make healthy foods taste good, right? You guys have liked everything I've made so far, so we'll see if I can continue that trend with what I'm going to do today. Okay, so does that make sense, whole grains? So what I want you to do, I'm going to give you a little homework, is go home and look at the grains that you have in your house right now and try to figure out how many of them are whole grain, right? You can count them up. So you're going to go home, you're going to look at cereal, you're going to look at bread, you're going to look at anything that's starch, as a starchy grain starch, not things like potatoes. And you're going to try to figure out if half of those are whole grain or not. And if they're not, maybe think about maybe what else you can try. Okay? All right. Let's see here. So what I think I'm going to do right now is I'm going to do our recipe. Some of you came in late. Let's see here. Did I? I'm going to get up for just a moment here. Those of you who are online. Okay. And I'm going to, don't know who all didn't get these here. Okay. Did you guys both get one? You did. Okay, wonderful. Okay, perfect. All right. So Sean, I'm going to switch to the overhead view, but I need to run into the kitchen real quick and grab my rice out of the refrigerator. And those of you online, I will be back in just a moment. Okay. All right, so I am back. Let's see here. All right, I'm going to make a simple fried rice. And I'm starting by adding some oil. Now, unfortunately, the only oil I had in the office is olive oil. This is not typically what I would use in a fried rice recipe, but it's what I have. Typically with this recipe, I would use very neutral oil. So I would use like a vegetable oil or a peanut oil, actually something that I would use for stir fry. We're going to make a stir-fried rice here. And what I have over here is cooked and cooled brown rice. Okay, this is a really good way to use up leftover rice. So what I'm going to do is, this pan is a little smaller. I don't actually have a wok. If you have a wok, that works great with this. Ordinarily, I would add the vegetables first, but, and this is actually the recipe that I gave out for those of you, actually says to add the veggies first. But one of the things about this rice is that it is a short grain rice, which tends to be a little bit more sticky. And what I want to do is just kind of get the oil, I'm going to kind of break it up, get the oil around it, and get it to just start trying to separate a little bit. And then I'm just going to put it back in here for the moment, and then we'll add it back in at the last part. Okay. My pan is screaming at me. All right. Put a little more oil in there. And I'm going to add veggies. Now, I happen to have just some broccoli and cabbage here. You can use literally anything you have. You can use frozen vegetables for this if you want to. If that's easier for you, go for it. This is, as most of the other recipes that I have talked about throughout the course of this class, one of the things that I keep telling you is I give you recipes for foods, for dishes that you can add stuff to before it goes bad, right? So I've used the example of the lonely carrot rolling around in your in your vegetable drawer, or you've got half an onion that needs to be used up, or you've got, some broccoli that needs to be used or whatever. This is another great dish, as the one that I made last week, the quesadillas, or the rice salad that we made the first time around, or even the smoothie that we made on the very first class. These are places you can add those vegetables, right? So what that translates to, again, for those of you who haven't been here before, what that translates into is not wasting money, because any vegetable, anything, any kind of food that you put into the garbage cans means that you've wasted money, okay? And that's not something that we want to do. If you're on a fixed income, even if you're not on a fixed income, it's just better to not waste food if you can help it, right? Okay. This is going to work better in a wok. I'm going to do the best I can. This isn't, when I'm doing it here in this saucepan, or in this skillet pan, this is not so much a stir fry as it really is sort of more of a saute. But that's okay, because we're just trying to have a nutritious meal here. So I just say that for those of you who might be a little bit more culinary purists and go, well, that's not a stir fry. What is she talking about? One thing about the stir fry, if you're using a wok, and ideally if you have a gas range, is that you can hit super high heat with that. That's really kind of hard to do if you don't have open flame. So I'm going to do the best that I can here. What I have is enough oil to make sure that my vegetables are coated, because anytime you coat something in oil, it gets hotter, because oil heats up much more than water can. Water evaporates at 212 degrees, but oil, you can get something to, over 400, almost 500 degrees. And it just means the food is going to cook faster, right? And that was one of the other goals of what we wanted to do here, was to make foods that cook fast, right? Because if you don't like to cook, you still have to eat. So what we want to do is we want to try to come up with foods that are healthy, but just don't take that long to cook. So if you don't like cooking, this isn't going to take you very long. If you can't stand up very long, for some people that is a concern. It's hard to stand for long periods of time. Okay? And if I turn this, you can see that some of this cabbage is now starting to get kind of brown, which is good. Brown means flavor. And that's what the heat does. But we don't want to burn anything, so we're going to kind of keep moving it. In true stir fry, they use like crazy high, insane fire heat to make that happen, but they have to continually toss it, otherwise it's going to burn. So I have, what I have is my induction top. This actually gets way hotter than this gets kind of grumpy if we take stuff off the... This gets way hotter than the electric one that I used to have. So I'm kind of, this is only my first class that I've been using this, my first session. All the other times that I've done this class in other places, I've had an electric cooktop and it doesn't do anything. So I'm kind of excited that this is really getting browned up. Okay, you see how nicely that cabbage is cooking down? What kind of nutrients do you think cabbage has in it? You think cabbage is good for you? Yeah, cabbage is great for you. What kind of nutrition do you think it has in it? If you had to guess. Might be one in there that you might be a little surprised about. Cabbage is a crazy good source of vitamin C. Huge source of vitamin C. And so is broccoli. Right? Most of the time when we think of vitamin C, what do you guys think of in terms of food? Oranges, right? I'm like, really? But there's a lot of really great vegetable sources of vitamin C, and these two vegetables happen to be great vitamin C sources. So what do you guys think vitamin C does in the body? Anybody know? Vitamin C is a very powerful, like vitamin E, it's a very powerful antioxidant. Okay, I'm going to put our rice back in here. Antioxidants are things that help prevent oxidative damage in the body. Now, what does that mean? Humans need oxygen to survive, right? We have to have it. But it also is something that can make us sick because oxygen is really corrosive, okay? Oxygen is something that can make, well, I don't want to get too deep into chemistry here, but basically what it can do is it can make cellular activity unstable. I'll just leave it at that, right? It can damage us at the cellular level, all right? And that's just the nature of it. We have to have oxygen, but oxygen can also hurt us, right? So one of the things that we can do is have a diet full of antioxidants. And when I say antioxidants, basically those antioxidants are things that help prevent oxidative damage. All right? Hopefully that makes sense. So it's just kind of a protection. So if you have diets that are high in antioxidants like vitamin C and vitamin E and vitamin A, those are things that are going to actually protect you. So you don't end up with damage that could progress into something even more serious like cancer, right? Oxidative damage has been linked to cancer. It's also been linked to heart disease, to the rate at which cholesterol plaques develop on the inside of your arteries, right? So if we can prevent those things from happening, that's great, right? So having foods that are high in these vitamins and minerals, and some phytochemicals too appear to be able to do this, then that's a good thing that we should have in our diet, right? Okay, so what I'm doing with the rice right now is I'm just trying to toast it up a bit. And I'm going to add some flavor to it in just a second. But this is a really great thing for leftovers, okay? The best kind of rice for stir fry is leftover rice that has been cooled down, right? You want it to be cool, you don't want it to be wet. You remember when I said that brown rice takes longer to cook? Okay. Because it takes longer to cook, if you live in a small household, one of the things that you can do with this is cook a batch at a time. It takes about 45 minutes to cook rice, brown rice. If you put a bunch of rice in a pot and you cook it all up, the really nice thing about it is that it refrigerates and it freezes really, really well. So if you're if brown rice is something that is acceptable to you in your diet, and you just have some left over, you can make easy dishes like this. Because one of the nice things about grains is that one of the best ways to get it in your diet is to eat it with leftovers. You got leftover chicken, throw in some whole grain. You got leftover vegetables, whole grain. You got leftover, whatever, you can put it in with whole grain. If you've got chicken, you can throw it in here. The recipe that you have in front of you has eggs in it, so that's a way that if you want to just crack some eggs and scramble them and then put them in with the vegetables and add them back in, that's going to give you some really good protein. If you got tofu, remember we talked about tofu last week? One of the things about tofu is that it tends to taste like whatever you put in it. So you could absolutely add this in with the flavors. Okay, so I've got my rice. I'm going to add in some pulverized ginger and garlic. Oh, and I'm going to heat that up in the oil. Oh, it smells really good right here. I don't know if you guys have gotten the smell yet, but it's I'm smelling that. It's nice. Can you guys smell it? Not yet? It'll get there. Okay, I'm going to start tossing this rice around, spreading the ginger and garlic. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some soy. I'm going to add low sodium soy sauce. This isn't the low sodium one though. Toss this around. And I'm going to add my veggies back in. If you're just cooking for yourself, you can just use a small amount of rice to make this. You could just pull out a cup of rice, throw it in there, saute some vegetables. I put, so usually when I'm making something Asian, I usually add ginger, garlic, and scallions, right? GGS. I went to culinary school, and that's what they said. You want to make it Asian? GGS, garlic, ginger, scallions. And so this is a really easy way to do that. I didn't bring any green onions with me, unfortunately. I meant to, and I forgot to pick them up at the store. But typically the way that I would finish this is you could put like a little toasted sesame oil on it if you want to. Throw on some green onions, scallions, and it's ready to go. Okay? So is that a quick meal? Pretty quick, right? It's pretty quick. This is something you absolutely could make for yourself. But one of the things as we're talking here about whole grains is I want you to remember whole grains are really good for using up leftovers. Okay? Put them on a bed of whole grains. Anything that you have. And it works really super, super well. Okay, so I'm going to taste this before I give it to you guys to make sure that it tastes good, because, you know. So I think we have, 7 people in the studio here? Okay. Is there anybody who does not want to have any? Because that's okay too. I don't take offense to that. Okay, everybody wants some. All right. I never take offense to anybody who does not want to try any. That's perfectly okay. I also want to mention that I did wash my hands before I made this. I just did it off camera, so. I never cook without washing my hands. Okay, so let me give this a try here. Good. Okay. You put as many different types of vegetables on here as you want. This is a recipe that I personally use at home. And it's another way to kind of stealth make sure my family is eating healthy. So I will put lots of vegetables. I always pretty much put cabbage in there because I really like cabbage. And I like, I think I spit on this plate, so I'm going to try to do another one. Peppers work really well, bean sprouts, carrots. What other things do you guys think would work well in here? Shrimp. Shrimp would work fabulous. How about other fruit? How about other vegetables? What do you think?
Peas and carrots.
Peas would work well. Carrots, absolutely. You put cauliflower in here. There's a lot of stuff you could do. Okay. All right. So I'm going to pass these out here. Just tell me what you think. This is super basic. Like I said, usually I like to drizzle this with a bit of like toasted sesame oil. It's really good. Okay. And it's brown rice. Most of us are used to white rice, fried white rice. So it's different.
Thank you.
It's dinner. It's dinner. Thank you.
We got one more. Sean, you want one? Got to take care of Sean. Yeah, it's basic. Got to take care of my AV guy. There you go. All right. Okay. All right. So, sounds like for the most part you guys are, yeah, it's really simple. A lot of people go, oh, it's good. Okay, now I have to ask you, because you go to the Chinese restaurant all the time. How does that compare? I mean, I don't compare myself to any experienced Chinese chef, but
I'm impressed with the brown rice.
you're impressed with the brown rice. Yeah, because fried rice is not something that you typically get that's brown, but, you know, do you have a comment? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually, normally I use a low sodium. This is a regular soy sauce, but I didn't put a huge amount. The thing about soy sauce is it has a lot of flavor. So you don't necessarily have to drown it in soy sauce, but it gives kind of a nice background flavor. Low sodium soy sauce is still pretty high in salt, though, so you want to be careful. You know, oh, it's low sodium. I can put half the bottle in there. But I think most people, when they taste this, what they tell me is kind of what you guys just said is, wow, this is brown rice. So, you know, because most people, when they eat fried rice, or you eat fried rice in the restaurant, it's white rice. It's leftover white rice. And it's great. This is, I think it makes it, there's a little more chewiness than you would find. But I think with the vegetables and the flavor, I don't think it detracts from it. I think it just kind of is sort of there. So anyway, so that's why I make this with brown rice, to kind of give people an opportunity to go, oh, well, that's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Good, okay. Ginger, yeah. Ginger is so good. I love ginger. If you, you can buy ginger raw if you want to, but you can also buy it, and actually, it's actually what I used in this, is they have it already in the tubes that's, pre-pulverized. Sometimes those do have a lot of added sugar and salt, so you want to watch out for it, but sometimes pre-processed ones can be pretty good. If you can't find that, just getting like a little bit of fresh ginger and just kind of mincing it up, just kind of chopping it up really well. Or if you have like a fine grater, I have a microplane at home. I don't know if anybody has those, but they're like it's like a cheese grater, but it's like super, super fine. And I run my ginger across that, and it makes it into a paste, which is really nice. So when I use the fresh stuff. But this is really simple. And it could totally be a good, healthful meal, because like a healthy meal, but also an economical meal, because it can help you use up leftovers. Think about any kind of leftovers you have, you could probably throw in that pan, warm it up, and throw it in on your rice. Doesn't matter if it's fish or shrimp or chicken or eggplant or whatever, you can throw it in there.
And eat the skin on the ginger?
You probably could. I think that it's a little tougher, so most people scrape it off. One of the easiest ways to take skin off ginger is to scrape it with a spoon. So you can cut it off if you want to, but it actually comes off really easily. If you just kind of scrape it with the edge of a spoon, it'll just come right off. Yeah. Ginger is really hot, so you don't want to eat it raw. Or maybe you do if you like, really hot, spicy stuff. But it cooked, it adds just a really, really super nice flavor. And it works really well with garlic. Yeah. So, and you'll see that a lot in a lot of sort of Asian American dishes, that they have kind of that ginger garlic base that, most of us identify, oh, Asian. So anyway, but this is really easy thing to do. So, okay. All right. So let me see. We just have a couple minutes here. We talked about eating in season, whole grains. Okay, I'm just going to do this exercise with you. It's on page 47, but you don't have to have a book to do this. We're going to do a make these meals healthier with whole grains. Okay? How would you make these meals healthier? And we don't have to stop with grains. We can just kind of look at the whole thing, okay? Meal number 1, fried chicken, white rice, salad with lettuce and cucumbers, and whole milk. What do you think you could do with that meal to make it better? I mean, yeah, you could change to white rice if you wanted, or brown rice if you wanted to. I guess this is just plain white rice. I think, so if I was having fried chicken, I don't know that I want to have plain rice with it. I'd probably put something in it, but fried chicken. Okay, so maybe some brown rice. What else?
Eat the skin off the chicken, fried chicken.
So maybe something other than fried chicken. Well, let's talk about that because I think you just asked that question. Can I eat the chicken on? Can I eat the skin on the chicken? Okay, so for many, many, many years, I've been a dietitian for almost 30 years. And for many of those 30 years, we were told, take the skin off the chicken. You can't have the skin, da 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 da. Okay. That doesn't necessarily appear to be the case anymore. Now, let me tell you why. Chicken skin has a layer of fat under it. But the thing about chicken skin, chicken fat, is that while a lot of it is saturated, which we know is the bad kind, there's also quite a lot of unsaturated fat in chicken skin, which is the heart-healthy kind, okay? The other thing is that when we're eating chicken skin, it's usually because that chicken skin has been fried, or it's got salt all over it, or it's got some kind of batter or something on it, right? So is it really the chicken skin that's the problem, or is it what we're doing to the chicken skin that's the problem? So what I would say is, if you like eating fried chicken, there's no reason to not eat fried chicken, but treat it like bacon. Right? It's something that you can have, and if you enjoy it, go for it, but it's not something you want to eat super frequently. That can absolutely exist in a healthy diet, right? If you're just eating baked chicken or roast chicken with the skin on it, that's a better choice than fried chicken would be. But again, I wouldn't go super crazy with it because there's still saturated fat in that chicken fat. Not as much as you're going to find in beef, though, or pork. Okay, so it does appear to be that fat does appear to be slightly healthier. So so if you're going to have prime rib versus roast chicken with the skin, if we're looking purely at health, I would take the roast chicken with the skin. But it also means it's not going to be an everyday thing to eat the chicken skin. But if you enjoy it and you have it occasionally, that's fine. All foods can fit in a healthy diet. It's just a matter of how often you eat them. Okay?
Eat a whole bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken.
I mean, if it's your birthday and you want to do that, go for it. I don't know if you're going to feel so great after eating a whole bucket of KFC. Yeah, I think most of us understand that eating a whole bucket of KFC is probably not the healthiest thing to do. But yeah, if it's your birthday or it's a special occasion and you want to eat a bunch of KFC, that's fine. As long as you're not doing that in your regular life as a habit. Okay, what else could we do to this meal? Salad with lettuce and cucumbers. What else could we change that, or do you think we should maybe add something to that? Lettuce and cucumbers? Maybe, sure. Okay. It's a good idea to get into the habit with fruits and vegetables to ask, what can I add to this meal? Okay, so if you have a salad with just lettuce and cucumbers, are there other vegetables you could put in that salad? Yeah, go ahead. Spinach, sure. Carrots, green onions, peppers, nuts, sure, absolutely. Think of salads as a place. I'm always going to, if you guys take nothing else from this class, I want you to take the opportunity to look at ways to not waste food. And salads are a great opportunity for that. Just like this rice, you can throw all kinds of stuff in a salad and it will work. Okay, so yeah, you got zucchini, you got, your neighbor just gave you a bunch of tomatoes or, whatever, throw it in there. Eggs, sure, you could hard boil eggs and throw them in there. So we're doing two things. We're avoiding food waste, but you're also increasing the nutrient density of that salad. So that salad can be more nutritious to you with every single bite if you get into the habit of asking yourself, what kind of fruit or vegetable can I add? That's actually a really good health rule anyway. Anytime you sit down to eat something, look at it and go, ooh, can I add a fruit or a vegetable to that? Most of us don't do that. We don't do that. A turkey sandwich, the first thing that comes into your head is not, how can I make that more nutritious? No, the first thought is, I'm hungry, I'm gonna eat that sandwich because I have a sandwich every day at lunch, right? But if you get into the habit of kind of critically looking at your food and asking what you can add, right? It could be grab a handful of peas out of the freezer and throw it in there. It could be, you could put peas in a salad, that'd be great. Beans, whatever, okay? So that's the way I want you guys to kind of start thinking. Yeah.
Is that olives okay?
Yeah, olives are high in salt, as you know, but they're also really high in beneficial fats, the monounsaturated fats, which is fine. I wouldn't add a huge amount because of the salt. So I would say that if you're going to have, per serving, I wouldn't put maybe more than 3 or 4 olives in whatever it is that you're eating. So yeah. How about whole milk? What do you guys think about that? Is that something that is cool for nutrition or? Yeah. Remember I said that animal fats are the highest in saturated fats, which are bad for your heart? Okay. Is milk an animal food?
Yes.
Yeah. If the food came from an animal, you want to choose the lowest fat version that you will take, right? So if whole milk, if you're better off, if you feel like you can take 2% or you can take 1%, which is an even better choice, then that's what I would do because it's less heart unhealthy fat. Let me just mention something about milk. In this country, we fortify our milk with vitamins A and D, right? Sometimes people call the whole milk vitamin D milk. I've heard that a lot throughout my career. But actually all milk has vitamins A and D added to it. Most processors do that. The thing about vitamin A and D is that they need fat to be absorbed. So when you have a milk, like a non-fat milk that has no fat in it, it's actually works against the absorption of the vitamin A and D. So if you have a milk with a little bit of fat in it, 1%, it actually helps absorption a little bit more. Okay, so usually, unless you really love skim milk, which is totally fine to do that, but 1% actually is a better choice for vitamin absorption. For people over 60, there is a higher risk of vitamin D deficiency. Does anybody know why? Vitamin D is a vitamin that humans mostly make for themselves. Your liver makes cholesterol, which I already talked about, but your body uses cholesterol to make vitamin D. Okay, vitamin D is something that helps mineralize your bones, keeps your bones strong, and it does other stuff too. But that's one of the main things that it does. And if the way that your body makes the vitamin D from cholesterol is by exposure to sunlight. So you have to have exposure. You need to be able to be exposed to UV light for a few minutes each day for your body to make that conversion, right? People over 60, let me ask you, do you spend more or less time outside now or when you were a child? When you were a child, did you spend a lot of time outside or a little time outside? Okay, then now. I mean, I can tell you that when I was a child, I spent way more time outside than I do now, right? One of the reasons why older people tend to be at higher risk for low vitamin D deficiency is because they tend to spend less time outside, right? So the good news is that you can go outside and you can get sun exposure, but you can also get vitamin D from things like milk, okay? If you choose sun exposure for that, it's really not that long. It can be like maybe 5 minutes for somebody who has super fair skin, and then the darker your skin, the more time you need to spend out in the sun, so it may be like up to 15 minutes or so, because it just takes longer for the UV light to penetrate into darker skin. But it's still not a huge amount of time, so yeah.
How about lactose milk?
Totally fine. Lactose milk, milk like Lactaid and things like that, absolutely, it's still going to be fortified. But you can always check the label, and it will tell you right on the front, fortified with vitamins A and D. Most milk is. Yeah. Okay. So we did a lot of things to this first meal, right? Yeah. I'm not going to go through all of them because we don't have enough time. But what I want you to do is just kind of look at these and ask yourself, what could you do to make those meals healthier? And, maybe we can talk a little bit more about that next week. Okay, so next week is all about the food label. I know you guys have a lot of questions about that. So anyway, does anybody have any final comments or questions or anything? No, I know. I've given you guys so much information, so I'm done talking. Good, okay, awesome. All right, well, we will wrap today up then and see you all next week, same time, for our final session. So, all right, have a good week, everybody.